Good morning. Is this on? Yes, okay, and welcome. I'll start by saying that for those who might want them, there are listening devices available in the rear of the sanctuary, and an usher can help you with that. And we now also have large print hymnals for those who would appreciate that, and they are available in the rear too. We gathered this morning, some of us via the internet, hello, and some of us here in the sanctuary on the unceded ancestral lands of the Abenaki people. And I am glad that you're here, however it is that you are joining us. Whether you come filled with joy or sorrow, regardless of your religious background or absence of one, whomever you love and whatever brought you here today, you are welcome. And I hope you find a sense of belonging here in this covenantal community. My name is Myra Aaronson, and I am one of a team of worship associates who have the honor of working with our newly settled minister, the Reverend Quaadgras, our director of Lifespan Ministries, Kirsten Hunter, and the rest of our wonderful staff, some of whom you see, and many others who are behind the scenes to bring you worship services each week. Reverend Ellen will be in the pulpit today, as you see. Here she is. The gift of music will come to us from our Director of Music Ministry, Johnny Pfeiffer, and our pianist, Susan Adams. The time for all ages today is offered by Jen Del Deo, our Director of Children and Family Ministries. And following that, the children will go to their RE classes. If you would like to socialize after the service, we will be having fellowship time downstairs with coffee and tea and some great-looking munchies. And now for announcements.
Good morning. Seacoast Family Promise is looking for some help this week. Since COVID started, we haven't been doing overnights, but we still offer hot meals for families with children who are experiencing houselessness. So SFB needs a few more helping hands to make that happen this week. You can see Meg Leonard. We don't see in here right now, but she'll be at the SFP table downstairs after worship. Or you can email southchurchsfpcoordinator@gmail.com, and that email address is in your order of service. Also, nominations for Shared Plate are officially open. During the month of January, you are invited to nominate your favorite local nonprofit to be included on the ballot for this year's Shared Plate recipients. There are a few ways that you can submit your nominations. There are paper ballots on the Social Justice Associate Bulletin Board downstairs. So you can fill those out and return them right to that board. You can also go to the South Church website and fill out the form electronically. And you can nominate as many organizations as you'd like, but please submit a separate form for each one. If you have any questions, you can reach out to the SJAs at socialjustice@southchurch-uu.org. And today, there are two learning opportunities, discussion and connection after worship. The first is Social Justice Associates will be right here in the sanctuary with UU Action New Hampshire to present the workshop, How a Bill Becomes a Law. January is the month that bills are presented in New Hampshire, and the goal is to enable advocacy for or against bills. This forum will be live streamed on our YouTube channel and will be available to watch anytime. Or you can watch it live right here after worship. Also, right after worship, Kirsten and the Learning Associates will have a coffee discussion in the Carson Parlor. I think it might actually be the Emerson room, either the first or second room on your right downstairs, around the Article 2 Commission. There are significant changes being proposed, and we want to hear what you think about them. This is our faith being shaped in real time, so it's actually pretty exciting. Later this month, there will be another opportunity for an Article 2 Commission discussion on Zoom, and that info can be found in your order of service.
May I be empty and open to receive the light. May I be empty and open to receive. May I be full and open to receive the light. May I be full and open to receive. May I be empty and open to receive the light. May I be empty and open to receive. May I be full and open to receive the light. May I be full and open to receive.
If you are watching us remotely, I invite you now to light your own candle while we light the chalice in the sanctuary. As we embark on the path of finding our centers, which is our January theme, we light the chalice today with these words from the Reverend Joan Johnson Lewis. As we light our candles this week, we imagine the lights that shine within each of us. We each have intention, we each have experience, we each have thoughts, we each have feelings, we each have wisdom. May these candles remind us to be in touch with those best and most unique lights of our own being, and to bring them into this room today and into all that we do in the world. Now please stand as you are able and join me in reciting our mission statement, which is in your order of service and should be on your screen. At South Church, we nurture spiritual growth through worship, learning, and community. We celebrate the worth and dignity of all people, and we inspire one another to act on our faith in the larger community. Thank you. As I was working on last week's service, when we talked about letting go, big questions, and home, I drove by the Quaker Meeting House in Dover. They currently have a sign outside that asks this: "What does love require?" Now that, I think, is a really big question, and I have been pondering it ever since. What does love require? There are many kinds of love, of course. You might love your neighborhood, love ice cream, that would be me, love a class you're taking, or South Church. But right now, I'm thinking more about love between people, not just romantic love, but any love between human beings. Which means that there are at least two sides to this question. What does love require of me as the giver of love? And what does love require of me as the recipient of love? I find these to be interesting and very difficult questions to answer. And it's different, of course, for every relationship. There is often ambivalence, the push-pull of annoyance and delight, and that is an inevitable part of all human relationships. So given that, what does love require? For me, this only leads to more questions. What are the expectations that I need to let go of to meet the requirements of loving someone? And what can I do more of? What do I need to let go of to better accept the love that is offered to me? And what do I need to do better? I suspect that the answers reside in my center, and when I am grounded in my center, I can sense what feels right. So I am going to try to live into these questions, as Kirsten says. And I think that to nurture my own spirit, these questions are best framed in this way. How do the choices I make about love, about life, impact the way that my story will be told? Maya Angelou, the poet and civil rights activist, said, "People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." How does the way that I manifest my love and receive the love offered to me make other people feel? Reverend Ellen will be touching in her sermon today on resume virtues and eulogy virtues. I can't say that word, virtues. Based on other experiences of loving and being loved by me, I wonder what will be said when the time comes for my eulogy. And now please join in singing number 188 in the gray hymnal, "Come, Come, Whoever You Are."
We'll be adding a little bit of the piece at the end that's not written in the hymnal, and the words are, "Though you've broken your vows 1,000 times, come, yet again come." Just say that with me. Though you've broken your vows 1,000 times, come, yet again come. Can I get a B flat and then an E flat? Though you've broken your vows 1,000 times, come, yet again come. One more time. Though you've broken your vows 1,000 times, come, yet again come. And we'll add that at the end of each time, and we'll sing it twice through.
Okay, time for a story, and I'd invite any children or youth and anybody else who would like to come up closer to hear the story. Once upon a time, there was a man with a story. And this wasn't just any old once upon a time story. You couldn't check it out of the library. You couldn't look it up on YouTube. Because this was just his own story and nobody else's. And it had been very carefully crafted. It started before he was born, and it contained all the things that had happened so far in his life, all the things he had accomplished. And it also included all of his plans and dreams for the things that would happen throughout the rest of his life. It was big and complete, and he loved this story. And so he carried it with him everywhere he went. It was big and kind of bulky, but that was okay because it was his story. And the thing about this story was that it was fragile. It was delicate, fragile, because it was only held together by his own memory and imagination. And so he was always afraid that at any time it might just break apart. And so he carried it and he held on to it. Sometimes it was a little awkward when it got between him and another person, But that was okay because it was his story and he really wanted to take care of it. And he was afraid more and more that it would break, so he held it tighter, and he didn't allow any room for adventure or unknowns, because those are things that might make this story break. And he also didn't allow himself to get very close relationships with people. He didn't share very deeply about himself because he knew that if he was vulnerable, that there were lots of ways that people could break his story if he allowed himself to be vulnerable. So he kept this protective border around himself as well as his story. So that's how it went, and things were pretty good. And in his story, it said that he would always have, he had built a successful business that earned him a lot of money, and he had a very nice house, and he had a lot of power. And his story said that he would always have those things so that his whole life he would have everything he needed and wanted, and he would be happy and content for all his days. But then, one day, something happened. Yeah. He didn't see it coming. It was unexpected. But suddenly, bam, his story broke and shattered into 1,000 pieces all over the ground. Just like that. It was really sad. And the man didn't even know what to do because the story hadn't said, the story is going to break, and here's how you put it back together. It wasn't supposed to break at all, but there it was, laying on the ground. And so he didn't know what to do. And so he just sat right there on the sidewalk next to the pile of pieces, and he cried. And he sat there for a long while. And then eventually, a group of people came out of a building nearby. And they saw him sitting there, and it was very clear that he needed help. So they gathered around him, and someone said, "What has happened here?" And he said, "It's gone. My story, I worked on it for so many years, and I protected it so well, and now it's just gone. It's gone." And there was a kid in this group of people who said, "Well, technically, it's not gone. I mean, it's a mess. I can see it all over the ground, so technically it's not gone." And the man looked at the kid like he didn't really appreciate that comment too much. You do? And the kid said, "We just need to put it back together." And the man was like, "Put it back together? You don't even know what it looks like. How are you going to put it back together if you don't even know me?" And the kid was like, "Well, there are a lot of us, and if we all help, I bet we could put it back together. And it might look different than it did before, but who knows? Maybe it would even be nicer than it was before. I don't know." And the man felt like he didn't really have any other options, so everybody helped and carefully picked up all the pieces. They took the man and his pieces into the building that they had come out of, and they made him a nice hot cup of fair trade coffee. And they sang him a song that was something like, "Come again, though you've broken your vows 1,000 times, come yet again, come," or something like that. And this song was soothing, and the coffee was delicious. And he started to perk up, and the man started to have a little bit of hope that maybe this could work after all. And it took a long time, but they did put the story back together. And this time it had some sparkly new pieces, like things that had to do with deep love and justice and generosity and equity. And there were some pieces that didn't really seem to fit anymore that were in the old story. And so the man thought that was fine. The new story was fine without them, and he tossed them in the recycle bin and moved on. And now, this time, the story wasn't fragile because it wasn't held together just by this man's memory and imagination. This time, it had the imagination of all the people and the glue of community, which is an incredibly strong substance. It's strong, but it's also flexible. So this time, the story could allow for adventure and unknowns. And so now, who would like to go downstairs and spread some community glue on each other's stories?
Each week at the Offertory, we combine our resources, maybe that's the glue that she was talking about in the story, to support South Church, the building, staff, congregants, and the greater community. In support of the greater community, this month the collection will be shared with Planned Parenthood of Northern New England, which offers not only a full range of reproductive and sexual health care services for people of all genders, but also cancer screenings, immunizations, wellness visits priced on a sliding scale, peer education training, and advocacy work. You can donate in many ways. You can use our mobile app, Banco. You can give via the donate link on our website, or sending a check in the mail to 73 Court Street, and of course you can use the collection plate. The offering will now be gratefully received. And in the words of the Reverend Caleb Parker, may we give in love and in hope.
As we enter this time of community prayer and meditation, I want to share with you some news about Betsy Tabor, a member of this congregation, who had a fall when she went to visit family over the holidays. She is now out of the hospital and hopes to be back home, hopes to travel home in about a week. She would welcome cards or texts. Another piece of difficult news, our former interim minister, Reverend Susan's beloved dog, Karma, was hit by a car last week. Yeah, and killed. As you can imagine, she and her partner Ron are heartbroken. If you'd like contact information to send cards or condolences to either Betsy or Reverend Susan and her husband, please reach out to a pastoral care associate or to the office. Let us hold them in our thoughts as they move through these difficult circumstances. I now invite you to gather heart and mind for a time of meditation or prayer with these words adapted from Andrew Usher. Let us pause together now and allow ourselves to settle into this special, quiet time, letting the cares of the outside world relax their grip a little bit. As we take time to reflect, let us give thanks for the small moments that make life special. The touch of a hand, the warmth of a smile, the light of the sun, the sweetness we feel when we help someone who needs it. May we recognize these glimpses of grace, these hints of the holy that are all around us all the time, but that we often miss. May we find peace in our hearts as we enter the new year and bring that peace with us. Allow it to move through us to all that we touch. May it be so. Amen. In this tender space we have created, I invite you to notice the joys and sorrows that are in your heart today, as we will invite each other, all of you, to honor them, if you like, with the lighting of candles, publicly acknowledging what is in the privacy of your heart. If you would like to participate, please come forward to light a candle as the music begins. And please remember, if you are going through a difficult time, I am here, as are your pastoral associates, as is Kirsten Hunter, our Director of Lifespan Ministry. If you need us, please fill out a card in the pew and place that card in the basket on one of the candle tables, or come find me or email our pastoral associates or Kirsten after the service. We are here for you. I now invite you to light a candle or for a joy or sorrow that is in you today.
reading is by the Reverend William Ellery Channing, often considered a founding father of Unitarianism. Here, in his poem, My Symphony, he describes the values he centered in his life. To live content with small means, to seek elegance rather than luxury, and refinement rather than fashion. To be worthy, not respectable, and wealthy, not rich. To study hard, think quietly, talk gently, act frankly, to listen to stars, birds, babes, and sages with open heart. To bear all cheerfully, do all bravely, await occasions, hurry never. In a word, to let the spiritual, unbidden, and unconscious grow up through the common. This is to be my symphony. I forgot to ask you to join in singing hymn number 313.
Oh, what a piece of work we are. When I first saw the title of that hymn in the hymnal, I had to laugh. After all, our hymns are supposed to be uplifting, positive, encouraging. So, really, we're going to sing about being a piece of work? I may not be a native English speaker, but I'm pretty sure this phrase in common usage is not usually a compliment. But as you may have noticed, and I did too, the phrase as used in this hymn has no hint of irony. The lyrics are uplifting, positive, and encouraging. We're marvelously made, we humans are. What a miracle of nature. We can make a world of light out of common clay. Although the lyrics are quite lovely, I was puzzled by the discrepancy between them and my understanding of the term that is the hymn's title. So I decided to turn to a source of wisdom greater than myself. I tapped the saying into my Google search window. As I suspected, the phrase piece of work was not originally coined by my college roommate about anyone she didn't like. It was first thought up by someone else altogether long before. Shakespeare, as it happens. What a piece of work man is was famously said by Hamlet in the play of the same name. In the passage, he begins by expressing what appears to be genuine appreciation for humanity. Like works of art we are, like the angels, the most perfect of animals, he says, only to then immediately dismiss that assessment as ironic, concluding that he really believes we are but dust, worth little, subject to the lowest of the low. Without analyzing all the ins and outs of Shakespearean prose, which will be a great relief to many of you, I did realize that this Hamlet verse and our hymn lyrics are opposing glimpses of a historic, twisting, turning, passionate conversation through the ages about the true nature of humankind. Are we fundamentally good, amazing, marvelous, holy, of the heavens? Or are we essentially sinful, broken, debased, of dust and earth? Are we a piece of work? Or are we a piece of work? And what are the implications for our character development? This conversation about our true nature and how we work with it started as far back as the 3rd century BCE, as Aristotle and other philosophers argued about our true nature, its implications for our character development, and for our happiness. Early Christians weighed in on one side and the other. Christian Calvinists leaned hard toward the depraved, broken, debased end. Unitarians who split off from our Calvinist roots largely over this issue were convinced that humans are fundamentally good. Calvinists said that humans are so broken, we can only find heaven if God happens to choose us, elect us for it. Called salvation by grace alone, the only way to heaven. Our Unitarian forefathers, like William Ellery Channing you heard earlier, preached salvation by character. Anyone can be saved, can approach heaven, build heaven here on earth through cultivation of one's character. So basically broken, saved only by grace, basically good, can cultivate that goodness in our character. But whichever side you land on, whatever you think is true about our core nature, you will notice that most of us show up day to day as a pretty complicated mix. Good, bad, indifferent, mean sometimes, kind at others, brilliant on some days, foolish on others, considerate at times, woefully self-focused on others. We've got it all. Kind of like those photos that came with your order of service. The question is, which do we cultivate? Which do we center? It feels particularly relevant this month of intention setting when we tend to reflect on big questions about who we are and who we want to become. And I appreciate a modern take on these ancient questions that commentator David Brooks lifts up in his book, The Road to Character. In it, he argues that he does not think we are hopelessly broken, but it's also not easy to develop true character in our modern world. Because our 21st century values are creating a culture of what Brooks calls the, quote, big me, emphasizing individual worth, individual accomplishment, and individual success to the detriment of less visible, slower growing traits that he associates with character, like selflessness, integrity, patience, and humility. As an example, Brooks mentions the elder President Bush. Back in the day, if his speech writers used the word I too often, he would tell them to stop. If he didn't, he would hear about it from his mother. I love that example. Brooks also cites a 1950s Gallup poll that asked high school seniors if they considered themselves to be very important people, to be a very important person. In the 1950s, 12% said yes. In 2005, it was 80%. Brooks also notes a shift in Girl Scout handbooks over time. Early handbooks preached an ethic of self-sacrifice and self-effacement. By the 1980s, the tone had changed, telling girls to pay more attention to themselves. How can you get more in touch with you? How are you feeling? Put yourself in center stage. Gain perspective on your own ways of feeling and thinking and acting. Just about everywhere you look these days, Brooks notes, popular cultures offers the same message. You are special. Trust yourself. Be true to yourself. The culture of the big me. Now, you may be thinking, hey, that's not all bad, especially when you're trying to counteract a historic bias of invisibility and voicelessness, especially for girls and women. And I would not disagree with you. But I think Brooks is suggesting that as a culture, maybe we've gone a little too far in the other direction, and we are losing something important. Because our big me stories can get so big and all-consuming, we can see things only through our own lens. We can become preoccupied with maintaining our image of ourselves and our ideas. We lose humility. We can't really see, we can't hear others, and life can become more and more like an airless room in which we are at the center. I think of our hapless man from our broken story that Jeanne told. I could relate to him. Maybe you can too. We do sometimes tell ourselves, this is who I am, these are my successes, here's what I'm good at, this is why people like me. Our stories may be big and bulky, but they are so reassuring. But then, of course, this man's story broke. These big me stories can be fragile, brittle. Something happens, we lose our job, or we burn out, or our spouse leaves, or our child does something that frightens us, or we get sick. We've done nothing wrong, but there it is, our story in pieces on the ground. Suddenly, we feel lost, bad, worth little, like dust, subject to the lowest of the low. I love it that it's a child who catches this man's attention and, in spite of his initial resistance, ultimately nudges him out of his funk. I love that eventually he listens, a sign of humility. I love that it's a whole community that helps him put his story back together. Now it's got the fingerprints of so many others. I love that he eventually did let them help. And I love that in this new story, we can imagine it had a little more love, a little more openness, a little more flexibility, and a little more truth in it after all those people played a part. Later in his book, Brooks suggests that the big me focus, the one that centers the self, tends to lead to what he calls resume virtues, things we need for the job market, like doing well in school, getting degrees, being successful at work. And they are things we need to live in this world. And sometimes they are things we hide behind just a little. He contrasts these resume virtues with what he calls eulogy virtues, the kind that people say at a funeral, like whether you were kind, brave, honest, faithful, what kind of relationships you formed. They are not as immediately obvious, nurtured in the privacy of heart and soul. I believe we all have these deeper qualities, but they can get covered over by other things. But they're still there, waiting to be released. Kathleen Taylor, a community engagement facilitator for the dying, suggests that eventually we all have the opportunity to uncover them, because eventually we do all end up in that same final place. She says in her TED Talk, "People used to ask me how I could possibly enjoy my job watching people die all day long. I had the hardest time explaining, but the reason I love my job is because people at the end of their lives are incapable of BS." When a person's relationship with their body and activity changes, and they are faced with the task of wrapping up an entire life, a lot of the normal distractions that tempt us away from being honest with ourselves fall away. Things like being right, being important, or even being guilty or being self-conscious, that kind of stuff. At the end of their life, many people become these distilled, crystallized versions of themselves. With no time or strength left to be otherwise, they are being who they really are. And out of this sense of authentic self, people get incredibly courageous and open and intimate and honest. They will talk about things they never expressed before. They will reconsider things they have been certain about for their entire life. They do brave stuff like change their mind or apologize or forgive. And they manage to find joy in the smallest moments. As their bodies slow down, their perspective seems to shift and their presence seems to expand. I love that description because I think it's a glimpse for any of us, whatever stage of life we're at. As Taylor says later in her talk, we don't have to wait. We don't have to wait to be more honest or real. We can put time into our relationships now and begin building a little piece of heaven right here on earth, starting today. How? Kathleen Taylor calls the end-of-life experience a forced sitting meditation, a forced slowing down, a space into which our deeper values can come bubbling up, nudging some of the busyness to the side and noticing what we really care about. But sitting meditation, forced or not, is only one way to let go of some of our incessant preoccupations. It's not the only way. One blessing of church community is the opportunity to be part of a values-based place that is bigger than any one of us, with support to slow down, even right here, now, today, to take a breath and connect with something deeper. Or we find wider meaning by going on a service trip, volunteering to make meals for the local shelter, writing cards or offering rides for the wider network of care, advocating for social justice issues. I hear you can do that right after the service today. Or even preparing a committee agenda or making time for the annual meeting. A book called Serving with Grace makes the point that any church activity, or any activity really, can be part of our spiritual path, part of expanding our viewpoint if we choose to bring that intention to it. When things get hard or something breaks, we can choose to open to learning and growth. We can remember all that unites us, even in the midst of the challenges. Our Calvinist forebears suggested that humans are broken and cannot fix ourselves. Salvation by grace alone. Our Unitarian forebears suggested we are amazing and can cultivate our best. I think perhaps they were both right. When we break, it is our openness to grace and to each other that can open us to something new, fresh, and more meaningful than we ever imagined. We can break open that airless room, let in fresh light, and be led toward a little piece of heaven. And we can cultivate our best, give love, offer grace, listen to someone whose story has broken, plant seeds of justice and kindness wherever we go, build heaven right here together. We are such a piece of work, though, aren't we? And looking out at you and knowing what I know of you, we are amazing, absolutely amazing. May we realize it in this new year, together and individually. Amen. Let us join together for our closing hymn, which Johnny will lead us in.
The lyrics are printed in your orders of service on the bottom of the right page. And the verses are call and response, echo, and then the refrain we'll sing together. So I'll teach that first verse. I get a D flat major. Call and response. May the life I lead speak for me. May the life I lead speak for me. Now we will sing this together. I'll sing it first. When I get to the end of my road, when I get to the end of my road, and I lay down my heavy load, and I lay down my heavy load, may the life I lead speak for me. From the top. May the life I lead speak for me. May the life I lead speak for me. When I get to the end of my road and I lay down my heavy load, may the life I lead speak for me. May the words I speak for me. May the words I speak for me. When I get to the end of my road and I lay down my heavy load, may the words I speak for me. May the songs I sing speak for me. May the songs I sing speak for me. When I get to the end of my road and I lay down my heavy load, may the songs I sing the path I walk speak for me. When I get to the end of my road and I lay down my heavy load, may the path I walk speak for me.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Our closing words are adapted from Rabbi Chaim Stern. We live at a crossroad between two worlds, the world that is and the world that might come to be. Nothing is ordained for us, neither delight nor defeat, peace nor war. May we choose with our hearts and with our hands. We can, if we will, begin to change the world we have into the world we want, building heaven right here on earth. Go in peace.